tennis about whether your ball was in or out, and then the person you're playing who benefits from that, then they are defeated, or then they get a call that doesn't go their way or something like that. And then the very next one, you see, yes, there is justice in the universe. As Dr. King said, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it does bend towards justice, right? So, yeah, anybody else have an experience, small potatoes or big ones? Yeah. Yeah, so if you heard a broadcaster in the sports world say a lot of negative things about the Chiefs, but then the Chiefs go on to win, and so maybe seeing that sort of the universe got revenge on those sportscasters. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody know what Schadenfreude is? Anybody want to? Phil, you're nodding. Can you summarize, or Julie? Yes, the happiness you feel at someone's downfall. It's a German word, comes from two words. Freude means joy, Schaden means harm, so it's sort of joy when you feel when someone else is harmed. Wikipedia defines it as the experience of pleasure, joy, or self-satisfaction that comes from learning of or witnessing the troubles, failures, pain, or humiliation of of another. And it has been detected in children as young as 24 months. So when their sibling steals their toy, and then the sibling, falls over or whatever, the 2-year-old child is like, yes, there's justice. This attitude on revenge is something. There's a clip I'm going to show for you. Hey, Wes, if I turn on the clip now, will it be audible? We'll see. Okay, get the TV remotes ready just in case. So this is, so that's Schadenfreude. If you ever want to know how to spell it, that's how you spell it. This is a clip of Fran Lebowitz. Fran Lebowitz is a famous writer, essayist, intellectual in New York City, and she's just been around for decades. And she was interviewed a long time ago, early 2000s. There was a series called Public Speaking, where famous people were interviewed just for their thoughts about kind of a Charlie Rose thing, but it took place, I think, in like the Algonquin Room or the Oak Room, somewhere in Manhattan. And here is the interviewer asking Fran Lebowitz about forgiveness. Yeah, so let's turn up the volume. We'll back it up. You might have to come forward if it's not working on the right-hand side. From your... Over here, yeah. So the problem is you, Wes. Don't sweat. We're good. We're very gracious people. Let me know when you're unmuted, and I'll try again, or volume is up, or everything ready. What do you think? Okay, here we go. What do you think? Okay, here we go. And you're sure the TV volume's up all the way? Yeah, it might come out. Well, it might. Try it. Let's get crazy. Sometimes it comes out of the TV. This is going to be the most disappointing clip of all time after all this build-up. Wes Jacobs is now entering the settings for the MacBook. He's gone to the audio menu. Let's see if this does it, folks.
Everybody here in Waco is just on the edge of their seats. He's lining up for the putt. Wes Jacobs is now entering the settings for the MacBook. He's gone to the audio menu. Let's see if this does it, folks. Everybody here in Waco is just on the edge of their seats. He's lining up for the putt.
That's the Facebook feed. Okay. All right. Well, in the clip, which maybe we'll send you via email, Fran Leibowitz has asked, do you believe in forgiveness? And she says, no. I believe in revenge. She says, they say revenge is a dish best served cold. She says, I don't agree. It's good any temperature. Take it any time you can get it. If you can get revenge, you should take it. And she says, she's Jewish, and she says maybe it's an ethnic thing because Christianity is about forgiveness. She says, actually, that is what Christianity is. It is forgiveness. And, everybody was Jewish, and then Jesus came along and said, you're all forgiven. So everybody moved over to Jesus. She was very funny, ironic a little bit, but I think she does nail something that is true regardless of ethnicity or religion. I think there's part of all of us that like seeing people get what they deserve in our minds. We don't like ourselves getting what we deserve, but we do like when other people get what they deserve. So we're going to read now from 2 Samuel 19, verses 16 through 43, kind of the second half of the chapter. And just by way of recap, David has come back to Jerusalem. There's been an attempted coup led by his son, Absalom. And Absalom dies, as you remember, gets his hair caught in an oak tree, and then he's speared 3 times. And David is distraught over the death of his son, so much so that he is completely oblivious to the victory that his army has won and saved his kingdom. And the general comes to him and says, your troops are ashamed because you're forgetting them. You're not saying thank you for risking your lives to save the kingdom. And instead, all you care about is your son who wanted to kill you and take your kingdom. So David sort of does a U-turn, comes out, praises the troops, and now he's going back into exile. He was, if you can remember, coming from that northern city, Mahanaim, going across what I've drawn in a yellow line, the Jordan River. So he's crossing the Jordan River at a city called Gilgal, very much closer to Jerusalem, and eventually going to go back to Jerusalem to sit on the throne as the Prince of Bel-Air. So that's what's happening. And the other thing to note is that a lot of Israel has been on Absalom's side. And the other thing you have to know in this passage is that even though you can see Israel is, you can kind of see on this on this map that there are different tribes of Israel, the different kind of colored regions. You are already going to hear at the end of this passage sort of the 2 major camps. The Sharks and the Jets, the Republicans and the Democrats, the Aggies and the Longhorns, whatever kind of division you want to pick. There's Israel, which is the 10 northern tribes, and then Judah, which is the 2 southern tribes. And so that's the language that has already begun to develop, and you'll hear that. So when we think Israel, we might think the whole 12 tribes, nation of Israel. But already at this point, Israel has come to mean the northern kingdom, although it's not a separate kingdom yet, and then the southern, Judah. So just keep that in mind. That's all background. So let's read, and you're going to hear names that you may remember or may not from before. These are characters that have appeared earlier in the story. And I think the main thing to know is that all these people were involved in some way in David's exile. When he was forced out of Jerusalem, when he left Jerusalem and Absalom entered Jerusalem to take over the throne, these were all people that were part of that story. Shimei is the first one we're going to hear about, and he's the one that cursed David as David was fleeing. Ziba is the one that brought food to David as he was fleeing. So I'll pause as we read because these characters are important. Shimei, son of Gera, a Benjamite from Bahurim, hurried to come down with the people of Judah to meet King David. With him were 1,000 people from Benjamin, and Ziba, the servant of the house of Saul, with his 15 sons and his 20 servants, rushed down to the Jordan ahead of the king while the crossing was taking place to bring over the king's household and to do his pleasure. Okay, stop there. Fill in. Anybody remember who Shimei was or what he did? It's okay if you don't. But anyone? Okay, so chapter 16, so we're in chapter 19, so 3 chapters ago. As David fled, this happened. I've lost my last page. Well, Shema cursed David as he left. He said, "Cursed be you and your whole household. You're the worst." And let me pull out my last page up here so I can read the passage to you. He said, basically, you are a man of blood, and you're getting what you deserve. You're the worst. I hate you. So he said, so Shimei comes out, cursed continually, threw stones at David and all the servants of King David. And he said, get out, you man of blood, you worthless man. The Lord has avenged on you all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. And the Lord has given the kingdom into the hand of your son Absalom. See, your evil is on you, for you are a man of blood. So rains down these insults on him. So she's hurling rocks and hurling insults. So sort of the sticks and stones won't break my bones, but sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It's not true. Words are the most painful thing. But Shimei is hurling both, the sticks and stones and the words. And at that point, David has an advisor who in this earlier time then says, do you want me to pull out my pistol and blow him away? And David says, no, because maybe he's speaking the truth. I have committed many sins, and maybe I am getting my just deserts, and so maybe the Lord is speaking through this person, Shimei. So Shimei is allowed to live another day, and now as David is coming back into Jerusalem, he's not yet there, but he's crossing the Jordan River. Shimei rushes out, wants to be the first one there to greet him when he comes over, and says, I'm sorry. We're about to see it. But you have to know this background to know what's in. It's before you find out that he's going to apologize, you might think after this last exchange that he's coming down to the river to say no or to protest or something like that. But he rushes down. The other person, Ziba. Anyone remember Ziba? Kind of a minor character, but he was the servant of Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth was the son of Jonathan, David's best friend. And Jonathan was the son of King Saul, David's enemy. So Saul, Jonathan, Mephibosheth. And Mephibosheth was dropped as a child as his family fled. And he suffered an injury to his lower extremities, both feet, we are told. And so for the rest of his life, he was disabled. And because he was the friend or the son of Jonathan, David promised to take care of Mephibosheth forever. He's the last remaining, or one of the few remaining heirs of King Saul. And Mephibosheth had eaten at the king's table while he was the king of David's table, while he was king of Israel. And so David always took care of Mephibosheth. When David fled in exile, Ziba, who was the servant of Mephibosheth, and David had appointed servant of Mephibosheth to take care of Mephibosheth and all of that. Please appreciate how hard it is to say that word, and I'm saying it repeatedly. I'm astounding even myself, but I want you to take note as well. So Ziba, as David was fleeing, came up to David and brought him 200 loaves of bread, a couple of donkeys saddled, 100 bunches of raisins, 100 summer fruits, a skin of wine, all this. So brings all these supplies to David as he's fleeing, which is really nice. There's no rest stops on the way from Jerusalem to Mahanaim. And David asks, why did you bring this? And he says, the donkeys are for the king's household to ride on, the bread and summer fruit are for the young men to eat, the wine for those who faint in the wilderness. The king said, where is your master's son? Meaning, where is Jonathan's son Mephibosheth? And he says, well, he's still in Jerusalem because he said, today the house of Israel will give me back the kingdom of my father. And the king said to Ziba, behold, all that belonged to Mephibosheth is now yours. And Ziba said, I pay homage, let me ever find favor in your sight, my lord the king. So Ziba, to summarize, found David as he's fleeing, brings him all this food and supplies, snacks for the journey. And David says, "Why are you doing this?" He says, "Well, I want to help you out as you go. Where is Mephibosheth, the one I've taken care of and been so nice to, your boss? Where's he? Why isn't he with you?" And he says, "Well, Mephibosheth has now seen that since you're out and Absalom is in, now maybe he can get back some of what should have been his as the heir to King Saul and all that sort of stuff. Maybe he'll give me back the kingdom of my father," is what Ziba says. It's a little bit suspect because Absalom doesn't seem to be the type of guy that wants to give away power. But nevertheless, this is what Ziba tells David. And David, to reward Ziba, does what? Gives him all the land. Says, "Okay, whatever was Mephibosheth's, now I will give to you." So Ziba is trying to do a solid for King David as he's leaving, and so he gets rewarded for that. So again, back to this opening passage, Shimei with 1,000 Benjamites comes down to the river, and Ziba also comes down to the river. They all with a bunch of people, and Ziba, it says, rushed down to the Jordan ahead of the king while the crossing was taking place to bring over the king's household and to do his pleasure. So it sort of looks like, if you imagine the river, this is the river, and David is crossing from over here to over here. Shimei, who cursed him, is on one side, waiting to sort of greet him on the other side. We don't know if he's going to greet him with open arms or fall down and apologize or protest his return. And then Ziba and his people will kind of rush over to help schlep all the stuff across. So they're kind of on two sides of the river. David and his people are crossing. And that's what's happening here at the beginning. So we pick up at the rest of verse 18. Shimei, son of Gera, fell down before the king as he was about to cross the Jordan, and said to the king, "May my lord not hold me guilty or remember how your servant did wrong on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. May the king not bear it in mind." So he's not there to protest. He's there to say, "I am so sorry." And he says, "Hold me not guilty, and also don't remember what I did. Not just forgive, but totally forget." To quote Michael Scott on The Office, how the turntables. Okay, let's keep reading. So, "For your servant knows that I have sinned. Therefore, see, I have come this day, the first of all the house of Joseph, to come down to meet my lord the king." Abishai, son of Zeruiah, answered, "Shall not Shimei be put to death for this because he cursed the Lord's anointed?" Remember, Abishai was the one that wanted to kill Shimei at the beginning when Shimei cursed David. So he's saying, "Now can I do it?" But David said, "What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should today become an adversary to me? Shall anyone be put to death in Israel this day? For do I not know that I am this day king over Israel?" The king said to Shimei, "You shall not die." And the king gave him his oath. Mephibosheth, grandson of Saul, came down to meet the king. He had not taken care of his feet or trimmed his beard or washed his clothes from the day the king left until he came back in safety. When he came from Jerusalem to meet the king said to him, "Why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth?" He answered, "My lord, O king, my servant deceived me, for your servant said to him, 'Saddle a donkey for me, so that I may ride on it and go with the king.' For your servant is lame. He has slandered your servant to my lord the king. But my lord the king is like the angel of God. Do therefore what seems good to you. For all my father's house were doomed to death before my lord the king, but you set your servant among those who eat at your table. What further right have I, then, to appeal to the king?" The king said to him, "Why speak any more of your affairs? I have decided, you and Ziba shall divide the land." Mephibosheth said to the king, "Let him take it all, since my lord the king has arrived home safely." Now Barzillai the Gileadite, let me pause here, by the way, actually, and recap, because they're always referring to themselves in the third person, like Bob Dole, so it gets a little confusing. So let me try to rephrase. when Mephibosheth came from Jerusalem to meet David, David asked him, "Why didn't you go with me, Mephibosheth?" He answered, "David, Ziba deceived me because I asked him, 'Saddle a donkey for me so that I can ride and go with the king because my feet don't work.' But Ziba lied about me to you and said I didn't want to go because I wanted to be with Absalom. But you are like an angel of God, so do whatever you think is right. Because my whole father's house were sentenced to death before you, but you were forgiving. You let me sit and eat at your table, so I don't have any right to appeal anything that you do. Whatever you want to do is fine." The king says, "Hush now, don't say a word. Daddy's going to buy you a mockingbird. I've decided you and Ziba shall divide the land." And Mephibosheth says, "Well, let him have it all, because you're home and that's the most important thing to me." So now, picking up verse 31, Barzillai, the Gileadite, had come down from Rogelim. This is another guy we met from Mahanaim. He's the guy that took care of David up there in Mahanaim. He went on with the king to the Jordan to escort him over the Jordan. Barzillai was a very aged man, 80 years old. He had provided the king, apologies to anybody who's 80, he had provided the king with food while he stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very wealthy man. The king said to Barzillai, "Come over with me, and I will provide for you in Jerusalem at my side." But Barzillai said to the king, "How many years have I still to live, that I should go up with the king, you, to Jerusalem? Today I'm 80 years old. Can I discern what is pleasant and what is not? Can your servant taste what he eats or what he drinks? Can I still listen to the voice of singing men and singing women?" Basically, I can't see, I can't taste, I can't hear. Why would I go with you to Jerusalem? Why then should your servant be an added burden to my lord the king? Your servant will go a little way over the Jordan with the king. Why should the king recompense me with such a reward? Please let your servant return, so that I may die in my own town near the graves of my father and my mother. But here is your servant Kimham. Let him go over with my lord the king, and do for him whatever seems good to you. The king answered, "Kimham shall go over with me, and I will do for him whatever seems good to you, and all that you desire of me I will do for you." Then all the people crossed over the Jordan, and the king crossed over. The king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his own home. The king went on to Gilgal, and Kimham went on with him. All the people of Judah, and also half the people of Israel, brought the king on his way. Then all the people of Israel came to the king and said to him, "Why have our kindred, the people of Judah, stolen you away and brought the king and his household over the Jordan and all David's men with him?" All the people of Judah answered the people of Israel, "Because the king is near of kin to us. Why then are you angry over this matter? Have we eaten at all at the king's expense, or has he given us any gift?" But the people of Israel answered the people of Judah, "We have 10 shares in the king, and in David also we have more than you. Why then did you despise us? Were we not the first to speak of bringing back our king? But the words of the people of Judah were fiercer than the words of the people of Israel." I know that was a little boring there at the end. I'm going to explain it and see what we can get out of it. But what jumps out at you as you read that passage? Anything that jumps out? Questions that came to mind? Places you got confused or lost? Or would just, where's this hitting for you? They're all kissing up. They don't want to die. Yeah, the people who insulted David, they bet on the wrong horse, and so now the tide has turned, and they're trying to make him like them again. Yeah. What else? Yeah, that's great. He's still in the minivan on the way there, and his phone is blowing up, and all these people are basically saying, "When you get back, people are trying to work things out before he's even back." Yeah, all the housekeeping, all the decisions. What do you guys think of David's attitude through this whole thing? How would you describe it? What is his attitude as he's getting all these text messages? Yeah, very mellow. Yeah. He says, let's see. He said, "What have I to do with you?" Then when Mephibosheth is talking, he says, "Why speak any more of your affairs? Let's just move on." He's very mellow. Um, This is so. Yeah, Sarah's question: is this before or after the time that David was in such mourning? He was mourning his son Absalom so much that people had to come to him and sort of say, "Snap out of it." This is after that, so he'd already snapped out of it. So he was mourning in that town Mahanaim. He was not in Jerusalem. So all his troops fought Absalom's troops up in that northern region by Mahanaim. Absalom's caught in the tree and all that. And they all come back to the city of Mahanaim, which was their base. And David was in that city mourning and grieving. And then when his general told him, "You need to come out and greet the troops and not be holed up grieving," he came out and sat at the gate of the city of Mahanaim to review and inspect the troops as they came in and to celebrate their victory. So now that he's done that, he's won, he's made the troops happy, he's had the ticker tape parade, and now he's going back to Jerusalem to get back to where he's supposed to be. So he's crossing at Gilgal, that place on the Jordan River. This is all after that. He's had the low, he's come out on the other side maybe, but he does seem to be, I think, a bit of a changed man at this point. He is, before he was someone who seemed to be so driven by his emotions that he couldn't control. Grief, anger, all that, and now he seems to have kind of settled a little bit. Or he's not interested in engaging. I don't know if you've ever known anyone who's gone through a major trauma in their life, a huge loss or a reversal, and some people come out of it, that kind of experience, with bitterness that they never really shake. I was done wrong or something like that. And some people come out of it changed and maybe a little bit less full of rage or drive, or maybe some of the edges have been worn off by that experience, and they can be sometimes a kinder person. So David, at least in this story, seems to have come out that way. Because he's clearly not here to settle scores. He's not here to get revenge on his enemies, which is something you see a lot when people take power. I mean, look what happens in The Godfather. During that baptism scene in The Godfather, where Al Pacino's child is getting baptized, but isn't that Pacino? Am I right on that? Yeah, he's arranged for all the enemies of the other, like all the bosses of the other mob families. They're all getting slaughtered because he's taking power now. His father's out, he's in, and he's going to clean house. That's pretty normal, humanly speaking, but not here with David. What else jumps out at you or caught your eye as you read? Yeah, I mean, I think so. So Shimei hurled rocks at him last time he saw him and called him a dog. And you're getting what you deserve, and now he's coming back. And he said, basically, God has chosen Absalom to be on the throne because you're such a terrible person. And now he's coming back, and with 1,000 people, I mean, I would maybe be a little concerned. Yeah, he does. We have no evidence from the text that he's worried. But Shimei pretty quickly falls down on his face and says, "Please forgive me. I know that I was wrong. And I'm the first one here to say sorry." And one can read that with a bit of a, that's where Jack is on that. And I think that's a fair reading. You can also read it as, maybe it's sincere. I'll go ahead and spoil it for you. David is very forgiving now, but on his deathbed, which you can read about in the book of 1 Kings, which tells a lot of these same stories, 1 Kings chapter 7, and David is meeting with Solomon, his son, who's going to be king, and he's kind of giving him kind of all his, as I'm dying, here's what I want you to do. And he does say, take care of Mephibosheth forever, and go kill Shimei. And he's like, I want his old gray head to like fall on the ground or whatever. So David doesn't, he forgives here, but he certainly does not forget, and he comes back later. So maybe that's merciful. Shimei gets to live, several more decades, but David doesn't forget. So, so yeah. Well, let me walk through and say a few other things about this. I think it is. I think that one of the things that I note about David's attitude, in addition to his mellowness, is in verse 22. There's sort of a confidence. He is someone who does. He says, "For do I not know that I am this day king over Israel? I'm the king. I don't need to settle scores. I'm not a petty, vindictive tyrant that needs to go and kill anyone who ever objected to anything I did in order to establish my own sense of power and ego." He says, I'm the king. God has put me in this place. What? Yeah, I'll get my son to do it later. But now, yeah. So, and he also seems to have this in mind, not just his own score settling, but he doesn't want anybody in Israel to die that day, because he realizes this is, like, there needs to be national healing and reconciliation as opposed to more score settling. If you get into the eye for an eye thing, as they say, then the whole world is blind. Like it's a cycle that never ends. And I think about you see this in history. If you get into a tit for tat situation, it's disastrous. And I think if you look at, we've talked about the Marshall Plan, that's one thing, but also look at Abraham Lincoln pardoning everybody after the Civil War. If he hadn't, that's very much like what David does here. If Abraham Lincoln had not done that, the animosity remained, and in some senses still remains, between the North and the South. But imagine how worse it would have been if Abraham Lincoln had wanted to kind of extract more blood, more tears from the Confederate States. So David has Israel in mind, and he wants to sort of have this reconciliation and restoration of all things. So we deal with Shimei. Shimei is forgiven. Ziba shows up and is helping, but Ziba doesn't say anything. Nothing from Ziba is recorded. We saw Ziba come to David as he was leaving, brought him all this stuff, said that Mephibosheth did you dirty. He was glad you left, frankly, because now he can get his power back. And what's this conversation with Ziba, or with Mephibosheth does show up. It might have been sort of an awkward moment. Ziba is maybe still there in his people, and Mephibosheth is there. What does Mephibosheth say actually happened? I did, because I was coughing. Thank you. Sorry, Wes. Sorry, people online. It wasn't important. No, my apologies. We talked about David being mellow, and he's forgiving everybody, and we talked about how trauma and grief changes a person. That's your quick summary. Online folks, thank you for your graciousness with me. So Mephibosheth comes back and says, and you can interpret this any way you want. The text does not say who was telling the truth. And David, interestingly, does not try to adjudicate it. Previously, when he thought Ziba was doing him a solid, giving him food, telling him Mephibosheth has turned against you, I'm with you, he's not, David gave him all of Mephibosheth's land. Now, Mephibosheth comes and says, Ziba lied. I was put in a dungeon. I found my way back to you. And because all of Absalom's people have left Jerusalem, so I was able to get out. I'm here to see you. But Mephibosheth said, look, I owe everything to you. If you think I'm the guilty party here, do whatever seems good to you. He's very deferential and humble to David. But David says, why speak any more of your affairs? Look, I don't know. Like, we can go around and around on this. I'm not going to settle it. I've decided you guys split the land. So, Solomon, it's like Solomon the baby. I think it's so interesting, though, in a world where many people have a winner-take-all mentality, David is able to say, look, nobody's going to get everything they want. We're just going to split it and move on. Because, again, as I said last week, that sort of advice I was given when I got married, you can either be right or have a relationship. And David here moves on from caring about who's right and wrong and just says, let's just split it and move on. And I think there is a lot of wisdom in that. Sometimes there's, if any organization that needs kind of everybody marching in lockstep and doesn't tolerate any dissent, disagreement, has no capacity for compromise and flexibility, that's called tyranny. And it only happens through fear and sort of a dictatorial style of leadership. It's not a natural mode for human communities. There's always different opinions, different views, different personalities. The only way you can get that is by enforcing it from the outside through threat of death and punishment. And David is allowing he's allowing this. He makes a compromise. Look, I don't know. Maybe you did this, maybe you didn't do this. Let's just split the land. If Ziba's getting rewarded unfairly and he lied, well, oh well. If Mephibosheth, if you were trying to, put one over on me and you're getting land and maybe you shouldn't, oh well. Like, let's move on. And reading this whole passage, I was thinking a lot about the current conflict in Israel and the arguments of the people who lived in Palestine and were forcibly removed in 1946 and 47, and their grievance, and it's a legitimate grievance, but the people of Israel have a legitimate grievance, and everybody wants everybody wants their side to have everything. Not everybody. Some people want, it's sort of a winner-take-all, zero compromise situation, and there's no way you can reconcile that. And even if, it would not, and the thing that's sort of funny about it is if the winner does take all, that also doesn't solve the problem. So if Palestine got all of the land from the river to the sea, that would not solve the problem, because there'd be a bunch of displaced Jewish people who then would have to figure out what to do. If Israel got it all, there would be a bunch of displaced Palestinian people, and they would still be angry, and the conflict would continue just in a different form. And so David here, I think, shows some wisdom in just saying, let's move on. Everybody gets forgiven. Barzillai comes, and he's this old guy that helped David when he was in exile. And David says, I want you to come over with me. You'll live in Jerusalem. It'll be great. We'll have ice cream every day, and we'll take long walks in the palace garden, and it'll be wonderful. You'll hang out. And what does Barzillai say? I'm old. I'm too old. They took away my driver's license. I can't eat the stuff I like. I can't taste it when I do. I can't hear. You'll have a court full of singing men and singing women because you're the king, but I won't be able to hear the beautiful songs they sing about you. I want to sleep in my own bed. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, we can hear Mr. Campbell saying that. Yeah, he says, my mom and dad are buried back in my. I want to go be with them. So he says, showing the kind of conciliatory theme of this whole passage. What does Barzillai offer the king? Yeah, turn off my mic again for the cough. Yeah, he says. He says. So here's Kimham, the servant. You can have him. But the other thing I'll do is I'll walk with you across the river, and then I'll turn and go home. Sort of like when you drop your kid off at kindergarten, you walk into the classroom. I'll go with you to the door, but then you have to stay. I'm going to go back home. So that's nice of Barzillai. Yeah, Barzillai had a hard time getting home. He couldn't remember where he parked his car. That's right. He's like, I don't want to go all the way to Jerusalem with you. Yeah. So the king goes to Gilgal. That's that important spot we talked about in the past. It's where Joshua, when he crossed over the Jordan River, that's where he had their big thing. So that's a historic spot. And it says, all the people of Judah and half the people of Israel brought the king on his way. Israel is a much bigger part geographically and likely population-wise, so it wasn't like... It could imply that half the people were not fans. I think all of it has to be a little bit exaggerated. I don't think it was all the people of Judah. I think it's supposed to indicate maybe he had a little less support among Israel, potentially. It's hard to know exactly, but both sides, Israel and Judah, are with King David. Then there's this weird thing in verse 41 and following. So all the people of Israel came to the king and said, why have our kindred, the people of Judah, stolen you away and brought the king and his household over the Jordan with all David's men with him? And the people of Judah say, because the king is near of kin to us. So this is sibling rivalry. They're saying, basically, and if you read on, you'll see, look, Israel says, we were the ones that first wanted to bring David back. He was in exile. He's your own flesh and blood. He's from the tribe of Judah. You should have been the first ones to ask him to come back, but maybe you're a little bit worried because you had betrayed him. But we decided to be the bigger, people. And so we went, the Israelites, the northern folks, we were the first ones that reached out to David because you were sort of you were the bad sibling. You didn't do it first, so we decided to step up. It almost feels like an older, younger sibling sort of dynamic. Like we were the responsible ones. We went to tell David he can come back. You didn't do anything, but now that he's coming back, Judah, they've been the one to take you over the Jordan, and so there's kind of this rivalry going on, and they're saying, why are you, basically Israel's saying, why, Judah, are you acting like you're the good guys bringing him over the Jordan River when at first you didn't want to bring him back, and we were the ones that first wanted to bring him back? And the Judahites say, well, the king he's near of kin to us. He's part of our tribe. We care for him. So why are you so angry? We've not taken advantage of our close connection to David. Don't be mad at us. Then Israel says, well, we are more than you. We have 10 tribes. You're just 2 tribes. If we're going to divide up David, like we have 10 shares of David versus your 2 shares, your 2 tribes. It's very juvenile. It's very, he started it, well, she pushed me. That sort of bickering going on here. It's been going on for a very long time. Started with, yes, exactly. So Jacob's 12 sons, who were the fathers of the 12 tribes, they were the ones that were jealous of Joseph and sent him into slavery, and this has been going on for a very long time, which kind of speaks to the generational nature of the arguments that are happening. And I think many of the divisions in our country today have generational dynamics to them and go back really far. And this is happening here as well. This happens in families. This happens in countries. And you could see some of the tension in the Middle East now is an extension of these same arguments among these same groups of people. And so, there's a lot of finger pointing, blaming, and not any real kind of taking responsibility or honesty. They're not dealing with conflict well at all. And for this chapter, it's a bit of an ominous ending. And it's a huge contrast with the attitude of David. David, the leader, is trying to reconcile and restore, but already here among the people there are these seeds of division, factionalism, and competition that will continue to threaten Israel and the whole nation going forward. And if you read the Old Testament, I think a lot of Christians aren't aware of this history, but there ends up being this split of the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom in Israel. It all falls apart, and you end up getting kind of a USA versus CSA situation, except it doesn't come back together. And by the time you get to the time of Jesus, the reason there's the people of Judah and the people of Samaria is because the Samaria are the northern people, the tribes of Israel, and the people of Judah are the southern kingdom, still remaining from this day. And those wounds are still very fresh thousands of years later after David in Jesus' time, because that's why Jesus has his disciples don't want him to talk to the Samaritans, and the Samaritans are mad at the disciples and all this sort of stuff. So this does not end well, and it's another reason, for example, by the way, why Jesus' ministry is not to try to go back and restore the kingdom of Israel, because it's a completely failed enterprise. Saving the world through a nation state is a failed enterprise in the Old Testament, and it's a failed enterprise ever since. And the point of Jesus is not to come back and be the king on the throne in Jerusalem. It's to be the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, and his throne is a cross. His real throne room is seated at the right hand of the Father. So let me just wrap up my kind of major points here at the end, if I can, and if you have time for questions, we can talk more about it. So the first thing I want to say is just karma. Whatever word you want to use. I don't buy into the metaphysical or religious implications of the idea of karma. What I mean to say by that is that actions have consequences, and in my experience, the truth always comes out. So Shimei curses David, hurls rocks at him, and now his actions have consequences. Ziba potentially lied about Mephibosheth, and his actions have consequences, and the truth comes out. In all these situations, what's amazing is as the truth comes out, the people receive grace instead of judgment from David. We've talked a lot about David being someone who is a prefiguring of Christ, and Jesus Christ gets called the Son of David a lot. We've talked about how David, in some respects, is very not Christ-like, and in some respects does show a real Christ-like attitude, and we do see that here, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But one thing that also I think comes out very clearly in this passage is just the evolution of David. He, from this kind of passionate man in the desert who wanted to kill Nabal, and he's a man that can get sort of full of emotion, and he seems to have evolved a little bit. He has shown graciousness in the past. Whenever Saul wanted to kill him, David kind of let him off the hook. So there was some of that in his character early on, but it seems that his character really has evolved, and that he has become, as Linda said, mellow. He's very forgiving. He's not interested in getting into all the arguments. I don't know if there are things that you used to care a lot about in your youth that you don't care about now, or you care about in a different way, or you just used to get really angry about this thing and you saw it as a very black and white world, and now you see more gray. And that evolution The Christian word might be sanctification, like becoming a holier person. And I think what's interesting is that this has not been wrought by David's consistency of quiet times or church attendance. It has been wrought by suffering and grief and living life. And I think that is a natural course for a lot of human beings. Christians make the mistake of thinking that holiness is some sort of self-improvement project that we can will with our own power and strength. I think most often what looks like holiness or an increase in moral living is age, hormonal changes, just being tired all the time. You just don't have the energy to do it anymore. And your holiness, it turns out, always was just a gift from God and Jesus Christ. It had nothing to do with you. And so David is someone who I think embodies that in this passage. He's not saying I'm gonna turn over a new leaf and I've been reading the Bible and I've decided to be a forgiving person. No, he's just someone who you just see his response. It's not calculated. It just is coming from him naturally. Like, I don't want to hear the arguments. You just split the land. Shimei, you're fine. Like, he's over getting. He's not really interested in the drama anymore. I said this already. Do you see this Christ-like forgiveness? This letting people off the hook, even when they don't deserve to be let off the hook. I think that's something that if Christians could just sort of drink that in more for themselves and display it more for others, I think the world would be a better place. We see that here. And we see that you can sort of even sense that had David chosen the other path, the non-forgiving path, how destructive that would be. And I think about movements of social change and how countries sort of turn out. I think about the movements for reconciliation, the Truth and Justice Commissions in South Africa and Rwanda, and how that changes a country versus, I think in this country, where if you look at the enslavement of African people for centuries, I don't think there's ever really been a full accounting for that. And I'm not trying to be political at all. I think there was in this country, there was like Civil War is over, everybody's free, let's move on. Without ever even saying, well, there's some pain and trauma, and let's give the formerly enslaved people 40 acres and a mule. Nope, let's not do it. Just good luck, guys. Good luck. You can't go to school or do anything, but good luck. So there wasn't like a kind of a deal. And I think here, acknowledging the wrong that was done, and then the forgiveness that then comes, I think is the key to moving forward. And I think when nations do that, really good things come out of that. Generally speaking. But if you try to bury it and not deal with it, it doesn't work out. It ends this ominous note on rivalries. It is so natural and human to form rivalries. We love it. It's deep. I mean, there is some deep psychological primal reason why every state in this nation has the equivalent of a sort of large liberal arts public university and a large science and agriculture-oriented university, and their football teams hate each other. They're all from the same towns. Whether it's NC State versus the University of North Carolina, or it's A&M versus UT or whatever. I mean, every single state in this country has a version of that. We naturally like to divide into two camps on everything, and that's what's happening here with Israel and Judah. It happens everywhere, and I always caution people to just be alert to that kind of thinking, be aware of it, look at it and see it when it happens. The us versus them kind of mentality. You see this in Jesus' disciples. Us versus the Samaritans, but even within the disciples, the sort of factions that start emerging. In the early Christian church, it's the people around James versus the people around Peter, Peter versus Paul, like all that sort of stuff. This is so normal and deep, and it always results in comparison, measuring, scorekeeping. And what I would give you is what is said in the Book of Common Prayer at the end of the Rite One service for Holy Communion, where we say, "Weigh not our merits, but pardon our offenses." If you're into weighing merits, that comparison and scorekeeping always ends up in a we're good, they're bad, or my side versus their side. In an economy of grace, where there is no counting or scorekeeping, but only forgiveness, it's a different world. I mean, I'm mourning the loss of the Detroit Lions. And a lot of people in Waco were mourning Baylor's football season. But imagine if there was no scoreboard. It'd be boring. Nobody would bet, nobody would get angry. You just would play for fun. It seems corny, hokey, a little hippie-ish maybe, a little woo-woo. But that's what Jesus talks about. I mean, it is finished. There's no more scorekeeping. Jesus Christ is the end of the law, as Paul says. And I think David is beginning to give us, or continuing maybe the taste of that here in this passage that we'll see later on in Jesus' ministry. So just, that's 1 Samuel, or 2 Samuel 19. What thoughts? What's sticking with you? Final thoughts, observations, or rebukes? Okay, well, you're in stunned silence. That's good. We will not meet next week, and we will not meet the week after that. So we will. I'll be out of town next week, and then we'll have Ash Wednesday on the 14th. If you want to come to our Ash Wednesday services, you're warmly invited to come at 7:30 a.m., noon, or 7:30 p.m. But let me close this with a prayer. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Dear God, have mercy on us. Help. Help us to receive forgiveness where we need that as well, and to extend it to others, to forgive as we have been forgiven. I pray this in Christ's name. Amen. Thank you all very much. See you in 2 weeks. 3 weeks.
Mild mannered man.
Do you believe in getting even?
You
Or
mean,
more
do I
just,
believe in
guess?
revenge?
Yes.
I definitely believe in revenge. I